Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hey everyone, it's Mikey from the Sign Off Podcast. Now before we get started with this week's episode, I just have a little bit of housekeeping to do. If you've been following us on our socials over the past 2 weeks or so, at Frameworth Sport on Twitter, at Frameworth Sports on Instagram, you will know that we've been doing a giveaway for a signed Mitch Marner Toronto Maple Leafs jersey in tandem with Chris Soutsos of @ThrashTV on YouTube. And in order to enter, all you have to do is make sure you are subscribed to the Sign Off on your platform of choice and subscribe to their YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/c/Chris Thrash. If you're watching on YouTube, we got a nice little graphic in the corner there. You can find all of their socials and how to subscribe to them there. I highly recommend you do so, even though the competition is coming to an end. Now we have to announce the winner of the competition, and it is Mary Field, jfield16 at kojico.ca. Now, all you have to do is email us at signoffpod@frameworth.com, and we will arrange to have your jersey sent out to you. And we thank you for taking part in this competition, and to anyone else who took part. Once again, we appreciate your support, and we hope you enjoy this week's episode of the Sign Off Podcast. Hello and welcome. My name is Mikey Ellenberger, signing on to the Sign Off, a Frameworth podcast for yet another week. And with me, as always, I'm joined by Brian Ellenberger, the president of Frameworth. Welcome. Thanks for joining. I saw you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you looked up a little bit as though you didn't even know we were here. I just invite him into these rooms and then start recording, and he just has to keep up. If you're watching us over on YouTube, which if you haven't yet, go check us out over there. We also have a new face, but a familiar name. We've mentioned this person on the podcast before. He's worked in business technology for 17 years and has been an avid collector since the age of 8. In his spare time, he shares his love of collecting with a Facebook group he manages dedicated to Sidney Crosby and Mario Lemieux collectibles. You know him. You will love him. His name is Matt Ellenberger. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. So I wanted to sort of give a brief introduction about which direction we're taking this episode of the podcast. You know, week after week, we bring on some of the players, some of the agents, some of the managers. We talk a lot ourselves about the way the industry has been shaped from an inside perspective. The one person we haven't really spoken to all that much is the collector. You know, ourselves kind of aside, we are collectors, but we come at it from a little bit of a different perspective. We wanted to make sure we give voice to the people to whom we're speaking. And I think you're a great transition into that, Matt, because not only are you an avid collector, as I mentioned, since 8 years old, but you also work within the realm of sports as well as in business technologies and e-commerce and things like that. So I want to ask you this. What came first for you, Matt? Was it the love of sport or the love of business technologies and e-commerce and realizing you could loop the two in together? How did you get involved with that industry to begin with?
Yeah, I think the love of sports and collecting definitely started first. When I was 8, I grew up outside Pittsburgh, and one of the reasons I'm a big Penguins fan. But growing up outside Pittsburgh, oddly enough, I was a Bobby Bonilla fan as a kid from baseball. He was my first baseball card, and so therefore I latched on naturally, as that had to be my favorite player.
Can I ask you a question? Was Bobby Bonilla? Did you know him before the card, or did you you said, I got this card, I need to like this guy now?
That's exactly what it was. I got this card, I need to like this guy. Made the connection, and like all things in collectibles, you collect on what kind of triggers emotion or joy or passion for you. And for some reason, that was what started it all. So I had that card. I got an autographed baseball for Christmas that year. And I displayed that proudly in my room. And then after that, I started to get, collectibles for Christmas. It was like, I'd always get a baseball or something like that. And it just started to become like a little bit of a tradition. And as I got older, and you can make your own money and not have to ask for gifts every Christmas. To get
I still ask my dad for gifts all the time. That's my go-to. He's
But you were in a much different position than I was.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I started, just growing the collection and broadening it out, and I always loved, had a natural passion for sports growing up, playing a variety of sports. So. I had my teams and players, and therefore my collection started to build around those in general. And as I got older and through school and everything, I always had a passion for technology growing up and business. Finding a way to merge the two was very interesting. And what I found through it was getting a chance to come in and merge the two. I've done negotiations and contracting in the technology realm is kind of my bread and butter. And I found that works amazing for when you're a collector, because you're constantly understanding markets and negotiating and contracting new items for yourself to bring into the world.
How much are you willing to pay for something, and what are you willing to give up to get? It's yeah, exactly.
Is this a great investment that you're making? And are you paying the right price for the thing? It's got to trigger joy, but also has to make sense. You don't want to kind of go crazy there. But and then getting a chance to work in with companies that are connected to sports and teams. And then in retail commerce areas, and understanding like how that works and how product flows through supply chains and how deals get done and how it actually ends up to the collector. Like that all became super interesting to me to kind of pull it all together in a 360 view of like, oh man, I started as someone who just wanted to buy a product. But as I kind of, went through my own, progression and career path, I was able to understand truly how like that product actually happens and gets to you. It makes you appreciate it a whole lot more and understand, what goes behind actually getting that product that sits in your office one day.
That's amazing. I love that perspective of it. A lot of us have passions for something in our life, whether it's collecting, whether it's movies, whether it's TV. And for some people, it's enough to just enjoy the product for what it is. You buy the signed baseball, you put it on your shelf, and that's good. And for other people, there does become a fascination with the industry itself. Matt, you mentioned earlier, and this is funny because I not to make this about myself, but I can relate in a lot of ways, getting into collecting and getting into a specific player because what came first was the player's card, not a love of the player necessarily. I remember back in the day playing the old NHL video games, and Maxim Afinogenov was a player that I just so happened to come across in like a free agency or a trade or something. And I just kicked ass with it. I played with him all the time, and he became one of my favorite players as a result of that. And that spurred this weird love for the Buffalo Sabres at a time when I wouldn't have expected it.
You'd be the only one.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding, all you Buffalo fans.
No, it's oh man, Buffalo as a whole. Maybe we'll get into that at some point.
What a shit show right now.
Wow. There's so much going on there with the Eichel scenario.
It's a podcast in its own.
That really is this.
I just want to get in a quick note. So I didn't know Matt until COVID changed a whole lot of things for this company. And one of the most important things was how to stay alive during COVID as a businessman. And that led
not just
to
keep our lives, not just stay alive literally, but also our businesses.
Right. Yeah. And we wanted to make sure that, so we had to pivot like any company that's still around. And that put me into studying the internet, Facebook pages, et cetera, et cetera. And I came across this bunch of different Facebook and Instagram groups. But Matt's stood out because it was the Pittsburgh Penguins, or Sidney Crosby collectors page. Right. So now I'm looking at this thing, and I said, well, I should join and see what's going on with this. Instead of selling to big box stores and sporting goods stores, I started looking at, and I never really was in touch with the actual collector. So now I look at this Facebook page that Matt runs, and wow, this is interesting. And I see comments. Some were negative about our company, and some were not. But anyways, actually, the fun thing was to join it. Made me feel pretty comfortable. I told you the story, Mikey. To join it, so I went to join it, and they asked, who is the exclusive dealer of Sidney Crosby product? and it said Upper Deck, and it said Steiner or somebody else, and it said Frameworth. And I said, hey, geez, Art, we're famous.
The qualifier was also, I think it was like brackets. Every collector should know this,
right?
And my dad came to me like a kid in a candy store. You touched on a lot of good points there, Dad. And one of them that I want to talk to you about, Matt, is you've been in business technologies for a long time. Your expertise had already been developed well beyond 17 years ago. A lot of companies didn't have an e-commerce platform. Business technologies can mean a lot more than that, but all of a sudden COVID hits and we're on our back foot a little bit. We have to pivot. We have to learn how to deal with the direct end user a lot. All of a sudden, every company out there needs to have a web platform, needs to be a little bit more customer facing if they want to survive this. And you find yourself, Matt, in a situation, I'm assuming, where all of a sudden your services are not only just widely respected, but essential to the companies that would have otherwise not had them. Did you find yourself in a situation where you felt to put it one way, you held a little bit more power in the industry, you had the secrets that everyone was looking for? What was that like for you?
Yeah, when you really think about it, when COVID happened, the companies that thrived and were not caught off guard were the ones that were planning that movement into digital.
Yes.
In particular, if you think of retailers, those who relied heavily on brick and mortar or, sites and malls, really struggled because if you don't have foot traffic, you don't have business and you don't have people, you don't have sales, you don't have money. It makes it really hard to survive. Those who are leading with digital were able to thrive because they were able to take and convert those individuals over into customers from a different path. And what was
same product, different means of getting it. Yeah,
absolutely. And what was beneficial for them as well is, especially if you worked for and put product at the wholesalers, is you could now sell direct to your customers, and beyond that, you could actually work to build relationships with those customers. Brian and I had talked about this before, but building relationships with those users who buy your products directly and making them feel and understand that you're out to build products for them. You're not out to just go and sell things. You're out to work directly with your customers and make them feel that. That's a differentiator in that space. And the Facebook group,
Matt? So one of the most important things that happened by my association with not only yours but other groups, but yours in particular, and I think the first conversation we had was a little bit I took a little bit of offense to something somebody said online, so I started listening, and it wasn't my intent to, and I forget what the situation was, but it wasn't my intent to have that reaction. But they felt that somebody in your group felt that whatever I did was, not right. Mm-hmm. And so that got us into a conversation back and forth where I understood one of your group members' thoughts on it, and he then understood mine. And then I started learning from this. So it really helped me adjust the way I market Sidney Crosby. Your group was instrumental in that, listening to them and seeing what made things tick for them and what didn't work for them really helped me adjust my marketing. I never got that feedback when I was selling to stores. It was it's too expensive or it's not too expensive, or if Sidney got a gold medal goal, then everything sold automatically and it didn't matter.
It's almost as though there were gatekeepers to the customer, right? I mean, people would pay for customer lists because that was the one chance they had to get in tight with the end user. But if you're selling to a retailer, they control the relationship. Their feedback may be, you never know if they're saying the price is too high. Is that for them or is it for the customer? Do they need more, and then I think you spend so much time representing, someone like Sidney Crosby. We mentioned this last week on the podcast. He could sell, you could put his signature on anything and it's going to sell. And you spend so much time having that success that you start to believe that all you need to do is come up with an idea, put it out there, and people will buy it. But once you find yourself in the middle of the group, talking to the individuals who are actually, you think you're driving the industry. The individual collectors are the ones driving the industry because they will or will not buy. And when you can communicate with them, even if they say you're wrong about something, it's not necessarily to say, you guys messed up. It's to say, we kind of want something different. And if you're willing to work with them there, the whole industry is beneficial and the product line increases in quality as a result.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting is I remember that conversation, that first conversation Brian and I had when he reached out and we got to talking a little bit, and a lot of that was around truly where the big gap is with a lot of companies and collectors out there, especially the ones that are really just out to not understand the collector. Brian heard the feedback and then was able to kind of come into the group and again, take the negative and the positive and say like, let me learn from this and figure out like, what is it truly that the collector wants out there? Like what are we doing that's different? And how do we make sure that, that we're on top of it? And those things that the collectors want are not usually things, sometimes that retailers are putting out because maybe it's harder to create what they really want, or maybe the collector doesn't understand the strategy that sits behind what that retailer is doing, and it's not really transparent for them. But breaking all of that down and actually having like an open communication with the people that sit behind the product. I talk about differentiators in that space. Like if you look across, the competitor landscape of like sports marketing and companies, like that doesn't necessarily exist in a lot of places, especially with anyone that has like an exclusive. So, like that's different. And it's something that I've, that anybody that listens to this, that's in the group knows, in particular that I made a very, open post that said, when Brian was coming into the group that said, look, Brian's coming in the group here to listen to positive and negative. There's no censorship in the sense that, if you say something negative, we're going to like remove it. Like if you say something negative and, don't bash people, but like if you say something negative or give feedback or say, I don't like this product for this reason, like Brian may chime in, like don't tag him in everything in the world. Say, like, please send me as many, like, please send me some Sydney product, please Brian, like, don't do that kind of stuff, but he's here. And be advised, you won't find this in other places. So like, understand that like you're able to get feedback direct from the source, and that's a world of difference than you'll find with most companies and their consumers.
And I think what I get out of this mostly, and people have to understand from my perspective too, is when we have an exclusive with Sidney Crosby or any of our other players, I'm there to protect the brand. And one of the things that I learned from your group is that I'm looking at, and I think the discussion that we originally had was, some of the new products that we're bringing out were higher price. And I had to pivot there because remember we're looking at, and so there was a bit of an uproar about, why are the prices going up? And said, because we've got to get our product in a position where it's the right place in the market. And so you got a Connor McDavid out there, who's selling it perhaps the same or higher price. Doesn't make any sense given that he hasn't done any of the things yet. I'd be superstar, no question, that Sidney's done. So why is that the case? Well, it was a different marketing strategy for him, and I started getting on board with that. What the other side of that equation is that Matt understood then that, hey, you know what? Brian's protecting the brand, but he's also protecting our pricing. And so, at the beginning, we're used to paying this, but now we're going to have to pay that. But all my other stuff's going up with it. Right. So we were protecting the collector as well. And so that's where we both got on the same page and said, okay, now I'm listening to what you guys are telling me, and we'll make adjustments, but we're going to try and bring out specialized product. And Sidney's prices and the value of his goods have gone up substantially since COVID started. Yeah. And have maintained the value, and I think everybody across the board is happy with that.
I think so. I mean, a lot of it does come down to, you talk about someone like McDavid, who, a superstar in his own right. But if the marketplace is shifting to a point where he is making X amount, and we know that Sidney Crosby is right up there with him, for example. You know, maybe any of our other guys, you got Carey Price, you got Jonathan Taves as an example. Eventually you need to protect the player's identity as well. You know, you don't want them out there half the price as someone who you believe is sort of a comparable player, right? So there is a little bit of a give and take. Our prices aren't always directly relative to an idea we have of our players. Sometimes we have to make adjustments based on how the overall market's going. And what I like about this conversation, Matt, is that we're kind of, you know, you have a unique perspective as I mentioned earlier, as a collector and also as someone who works in it. So you know, running this Facebook account, not only are you doing so that you can, you know, increase your collectibles and interact with the fans who are like-minded just like you, but you also get to kind of work with this symbiotic relationship between the producer, manufacturer, and marketer and the collectors themselves. Do you feel like there's a benefit to the group in you having both experiences, and how do you kind of lean on that without feeling like you're being biased in any way? Is there any strategies you have there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I look at is, and I get a ton of messages per week on what is the value of this product, or what do you think the value is of that? It may be a current, it may be a past product, and you know, do this across both you know, Sid and Mario products. And you know, I take a lot of pride in the fact of, like, you know, making sure that I've got data or some sort of knowledge to, like, give people feedback, because it's people's money out there, and I feel like the onus that if I give bad feedback or you know, if I make sure I don't know what I don't know, and I would tell them that, but you know, I don't want to give anybody bad guidance, even though this is all voluntary, and you know, we're kind of doing this in the collector's world, but you know, I see enough things move in different groups online. I know kind of how prices have trend, COVID impacts. Like, I've watched those things, and I probably watch them more than most, again, because it's how my brain's wired a little bit from the professional world. You know, but when you look at it, you've got to say there's always a strategy behind things, and you know, you can't please everybody. You're always going to have half the people out there that are going to want to buy something for the lowest price humanly possible. And then you're going to have another half of people that want something to be worth as much as possible. And then you're going to want the people who buy it low to have bought it low. And then they're immediately going to want to say, I want it to be worth as much as possible.
Right.
And it's a constant struggle between that. And kind of when I tell people who, you know, are getting into it and have price discussions, because Brian's right. I think the first conversation we had was around kind of that battle of price. You know, I even got like a bit of a heat going, you know, where people were sending me messages, you know, when I was supportive of the price coming up, because I agreed Crosby and McDavid should be a similar price point.
Right.
Not everybody would agree with that. And some people were very upset with me, saying that like Sid should be a lower price point because he's a nice guy, and it should be like, you know, more accessible to people. And
what a perspective.
Well, believe it or not, that's the way he thinks.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like he's not in it for the money. He doesn't need the money. He's in it to make sure that there's a source of a valid source, an authentic source of products of his that aren't, I mean, you see every day on Facebook pages where he's holding up a T-shirt that he never held up, and it's all photoshopped, and hey, Sydney wants you to buy this product. And you can't stop that stuff. You can report it. So he wants to make sure there's an authentic source that you can rely on, and that's Frameworth, and it's not about the money. I just don't want to be embarrassed by the fact that, you know, there's guys that are selling for more money that have nowhere near the types of careers that he is having.
It's interesting because I think that, you know, presumably a lot of people from your group, and we'll get into your group more specifically in a little bit here, will be listening to this. And to those who are hearing this, who are on that side, who believe that Sidney Crosby should sell for a slightly lower price, I don't think that they're wrong. I think that Sidney has garnered, you know, I don't think that their opinion is incorrect. Ultimately, I believe that his price should be higher, but I think there's value and merit in what they're saying, in the sense that Sidney Crosby has grown his brand and his identity carefully, you know, I think naturally because he is this way, but it also does take a lot of work to be the accessible one, the down to earth, the this, the that, the people's player. You know, he often talks about how he was never a first line player. He was always just, a third line player who worked hard enough to make it to, that sort of thing. And because of that, people do have that perspective of like, well, you shouldn't be the one, holding out for a contract dispute or raising your prices and things like that. And those people who think that probably like Sidney for the reason that he's garnered this image. So he's got to take the good with the bad a little bit in that sense, right? Like he's got to understand that some people will push back a little bit. And so for those people with that opinion, it's completely valid. And I think that part of the identity of Sidney Crosby, when you're a player like he is organic and kind of separate from him. It has to do with how the public sees him. That is what his identity ends up being, as much as he wants to control it a certain way. So, there's a lot of give and take there. And that's why I love ecosystems like your groups on Facebook, which kind of demonstrate that. Now, I want to get before we get into the Facebook groups, Matt, I want to talk about, we've talked a lot about you professionally. I want to talk about you as a collector as well, because I think it does, just like we like to profile someone like Sidney Crosby, I think we should be profiling the people who collect his products as well, Matt. Now, you mentioned you started collecting at 8 years old. Was it always baseball and then it evolved into hockey? Did your thoughts on collecting, similar to the baseball, shape who you followed beyond that, or how did it grow? How did it grow into what you do now, and how you sort of express your love of the sports through collecting?
Yeah, I think as I got older, I started to with anything, you start to see things in a bit of a different way. So growing up, I loved Bonilla, because it was my first baseball card, but I grew up in the Griffey area. I've got like a Griffey jersey behind me. Kind of
actually let's draw attention to that. If you're watching this on YouTube, you have a shrine behind you of all various different types of jerseys. We see some Sidney, some Lemieux, some Mike Trout. There's a lot there. That is a collection that any fan would be proud of. So if you're not watching on YouTube, head over there quickly and just take a look at Matt's screen. It's pretty impressive.
And with the players, everybody that I have here in my office, like those are my personal, those are the people and teams that I latched onto for various reasons. And as I evolved, I believe collecting should have a story behind it. Like collect for a reason and collect with intent. Don't collect just to get things.
Sure.
And that's kind of the way that I've always approached collecting. So baseball evolved into, getting, football. Despite growing up outside Pittsburgh, I loved, like Derek Thomas, in the late 80s and 90s as a kid playing linebacker in football. So, I became a Chiefs fan early on. So I was collecting, Chiefs things and naturally, but, I think the Penguins are really my only hometown team that I actually like. Cause I followed my players around. Bonilla retired a Cardinal. He actually, his injury paved the way, I think, for Pujols to come in. So kind of latched on Pujols a bit. So I became a Cardinals fan, and that's my life fan. When my favorite player retired with a team, that became my team. So that built my story of things. So I have Cardinals things, and I have a bunch of Hall of Fame baseballs and like the 500 home run club ball signed that sit like above, I think, where the cutoff is here.
Didn't you tell me you threw out the first pitch at the card? I was telling you, I posted a picture of being in Busch Stadium last weekend with Wayne, and he pitched. Yeah, I threw out the first pitch there one time.
Did you really? Tell that story. How did that happen? A
couple years ago, I, in the wonderful world of business, those who thrive are really good networkers. So networked my way into, someone who worked with Bank of America, and they just so happened to have the sponsorship that went around first pitches, and was able to get into throwing out a first pitch before a Cardinals versus Nationals game there. And I always laughed at I've got the ball with a picture of me throwing it here in a different part of my office, and I threw it to Alex Reyes, who's now the closer for the Cardinals, an all-star. I laughed, but I went to the mound to throw the pitch. And apparently that wasn't a commonplace to do that, and they had not had a lot of success from people throwing it from the mound.
They usually go a little closer, right? Yeah.
They usually stand at the edge of the mound where the grass is, so they can get the ball there. At that time, I stopped playing baseball competitive 2 years ago, right before COVID, but I had just played a couple days before that. So I was like, yeah, I don't worry. I can throw it from the mound to the plate. We'll be all right. And they have the TV feed of it, and you see Alex Reyes get down, and Redbird gets in the box, and you just see Reyes look up at him, and he tells him, like, back out of the batter's box. Like, I don't know where that's going to go. And then I ended up throwing it over. I mean, I threw a striker over the plate.
I was going to ask. I was curious. Yeah.
But
nice.
I laughed because I was looking back at that video, and I just see him look up at the mascot, telling him, like, you might want to get out. And I just had flashbacks to that first pitch of the one kid in Boston who threw it over the home plate and got the photographer way back in the backstop in a very not so great spot. It's like, don't be that guy.
That's all I'd be thinking the whole time. It's not even for just like especially the way the internet works, and you being someone who's done it for 17 years, everything lives in infamy forever. Once you're there, you're there. And there's no, like, you will be on video compilations.
McGregor's pitch the other day, he threw it so bad it was way out. I don't know. I just saw it on YouTube. Anyways, we digress, but I just wanted
That's
to get
a great
that
story.
in.
No, I love hearing that.
So I said, I got an invite to see the Cardinals game, sit in the owner's box with Wayne Gretzky, from Wayne Gretzky. And his response was, well, I threw out the first pitch there. like
going a little
remember
bit
how we were talking the other day about one-upmanship with Wayne Gretzky stories where I did this, well, I did that.
Yes.
Wayne sat with me for a drink while Wayne invited me for dinner, and Wayne did.
That was on the episode with Jim
about.
Jerome talking about what it's like at the fantasy camps where everyone's like I was down here and he came first, and we talked
anyway. So we interrupted, but go ahead.
Yeah.
So
I'll gladly trade that first pitch any day for sitting in a box with Wayne for a game.
Matt, is there just to stay on the personal bit, the personal kick a little bit? Is there a most favorite piece that you own? Doesn't have to be the most valuable, but something that you kind of look at and cherish the most. And do you have a story behind that one?
You know, what I tell people, I get that question a good bit. And what I generally tell people is the way I built my collection, I can almost talk to a story behind every piece. And I can go through every single item I have and tell you exactly where I got it and how I got it.
Interesting.
And,
all right, let's do it. Start from the first one.
All right. It's going to be the longest podcast in history. So it becomes hard because, like, they mean different things in different ways, you know, for me. One of the things I look at as a collector in particular, you know, I talk about what brings you joy and what makes you happy, is I try to think about, like, unique experiences or, like, pieces I know that, you know, I may not find somewhere else. And a couple of them come to mind. You know, I almost put them as a bit of a tie. One would be, you know, I got a picture of me skating with, on a line with Mario that he signed and inscribed, you know, for me. And
this is back when you played for the Penguins, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we missed each other. That's a fantasy camp one, right?
Yeah, that was a fantasy camp one.
We missed each other. I played that 2 years, and
the first 2 years, I think that.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, it might have been the first 2 years.
Yeah. We missed each other by a lot because they're about to do year 10.
Oh wow.
But you know what? Same with me. One of my favorite pieces of memorabilia is that shot with Mario and I lining up for a face-off against each other. So that's cool.
Yeah. And it's great. It's got the backs of our jerseys, and we're just skating together with, like, nothing else behind. I kind of edited it, and he signed it nice for me, which was great. And it's, like, you know, just one of those personalized pieces that's, like, super nice. Like that. Along with, I'd say, probably, like, two other particular pieces. One would be a 500 home run ball with, like, Ted Williams and Mickey Mantle on the sweet spot, perfectly white, all 11 members of, like, the original club on the ball.
Wow.
And it's just one of those things where, like, those balls exist, but with those two on it and it being white and not toned yellow or in bad condition, like, and there's a nice story behind it because, like, I, you know, being a big baseball fan as well, and the history behind it, you appreciate that as you get older.
Right.
And then the other one is actually a Sidney Crosby piece, which is an autographed game used stick.
Oh, wow.
And that sits, you know, behind my monitors here, like, you know, prestigiously on the wall. I'm mounted up above a couple autographed jerseys and, you know, a Blades stick Frameworth product as well. And like, you know, I see that every day as I sit in my office and work, and it's, you know, it's one of those things you look at and you think like parts of history and,
yeah. Well, you and I are going to sit down and talk about what unique things that haven't been out there, and we have had some conversations, would be a big value that we haven't done yet. Personalized stuff for sure, but Sydney doesn't do a lot of that, which makes it even more important. But just different things like that. We want more of those things in our product line, and they don't have to be in large volume. They're going to be unique, but something that you're going to want to talk about. Game use sticks are obviously hard to find, and we have very limited. I've got a bunch of them, but they're all from huge games, and we're not supposed to be releasing them.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that's kind of like we talk about you, Matt, and how you have that sort of that connection to both the world of the collector and the business world outside of it, or that kind of creates the collectibles. And we also have an affinity for a history of the game. Otherwise, we never would have gotten in this. So every time, you know, we have a piece of game used equipment for Sidney Crosby, and we're looking at it, and it's like he used this in the Olympics, like with the gold medal game or something like that. And we're like, do we even want to let this go? You know what I mean? Like,
no, we don't. In fact, I'm not supposed to. Well, I'm not supposed to. I can't.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
We've tagged every, and I had somebody authenticate and photo match all of the products that we have, and so we know where they were, where they came from. Even interesting story too, and I don't even know if you know this, but Matt, but when I first did my first signing with Sydney back in Rimouski when he was playing for Rimouski, I told him, just out of, you know, just conversation, I said, you know, one thing you should probably do is put some game use stuff away because it'll be valuable one day. This was when he was 15 years old. And never thought anything of it until, I don't know, 5-6 years ago when I got a call from Dana Hines, the equipment manager, trainer. So he says, Brian, can you get down here with a truck? And I said, well, what for? And he said, well, we've got a bunch of stuff that Sydney's put away. And there was like a whole big bin full of stick blades and equipment and all that. So Sydney, I thought he wasn't even listening, had tucked it away. Not only that, but he had Dana mark the date on everything.
Yeah.
So it makes it so much more authentic. And so we have this stuff. A lot of it we won't sell. It should be in the Hall of Fame one day. You know, Stanley Cup sticks that he scored with or whatever. But we release a little bit at a time, and he doesn't use that many of, you know, say helmets and pants and things. So it's rare, but once in a while you'll see them come available. But that was just Sydney not thinking, he wasn't paying attention, and put everything away. It's great.
Now, you know, obviously the shared love of the Pittsburgh Penguins and Sidney Crosby, and Matt, you're obviously a huge Penguins fan yourself. And the two groups, I believe, the Facebook groups that you manage are specific collectibles for Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby, or is it's one group that does both? It's two different groups.
Two different groups.
So, Matt, why don't you talk a little bit about how you got involved? Because you didn't found the groups to begin with. I believe you were brought in and made administrator because of the value that you brought to them. Is that how it worked?
Yeah. So the groups, you know, I originally started talking to, you know, a couple collectors, you know, through different groups. So over time, and this pre-COVID, you know, and there was one individual, you know, Casey Waltz, who collected. He kind of was a bit of a goats collector, and like had, you know, Mario and Sid and Gretzky. Yeah. And he had been part of a Gretzky group, and he thought, well, I should create a Mario and a Sid group. So I originally came on kind of like as a moderator in the group, because we had all kinds of great conversations. He knew I was a heavy Sid and Mario collector. And so he created those groups, and, you know, he had Austin Marchand, you know, with him as well. So shortly after he created him, he decided, you know what, I'm just really going to focus on Gretzky. So, you know, he's take the groups, you know, I don't know, it might even been a month after it was created or so. But, you know, here you go. I set up these groups, you know, there's a couple people in them already. Go ahead and, you know, if you want them, go ahead and take them. So, at that point, you know, took over kind of the admin there, with them, and, went through and figured like, well, you know what, let's, like, what do we want to do with this? And it goes back to like the business mind and like the branding aspect of it is like, how do we be different and make like a different kind of community out there for people? Because there's a lot of group, you can go anywhere and buy, sell, trade stuff.
Sure.
What you don't find are communities of collectors that like want to exchange and talk about collecting and who they collect. So one of the things I wanted to do there was make a community around collecting, and like that is the intent behind it. So these kicked off in I think it was June 2020, and like the SID group has approaching 650 people in it. In roughly a year, the Mario one is approaching on 500 people, and I'd say like 80% of the people in each one of those rooms are like collectors. They're not the casual fan, although we welcome and we have people in there because we want people who are maybe even just starting in and want help collecting. Like, am I buying the right? Is this real or fake? Does anybody know anything about this? And we've helped people identify, and hopefully prevent them from purchasing bad items, fake in-person autographs, or maybe like spending as much money on a bad auto as they could a nice sit-down one like a Frameworth piece. And one thing that the members have seemed to really like around it is kind of the guidelines that we have around collecting. Like, when you join the group, you mentioned before that you got to say like, who's the exclusive provider of autographs for Sidney Crosby. The other things we have in there are like, you can't come in here and try to post and sell a whole bunch of stuff. Like you need to be an active member for 30 days. We don't want people coming in and just dumping their stuff out. It's a community for collectors to collect. And something you also don't see in many groups is like a lot of people post what I always hashtag as mail days, like Sid mail day or Mario mail days. Like when you get something new, it doesn't matter if everybody in the world has seen this product. Like post it, show it, like be proud of it, like show people your collection, get people talking, get people engaging on it. It's a great forum for people to do that and be proud of it, whether it's their first piece or their 100th piece that's out there.
I love that. One of the kind of vibes that I love so much about the groups that you run is that there are so many groups out there and so many collectors out there who are so hyper focused on getting something else and getting the best price and just almost not collecting but hoarding. And if that's what you do, that's fine. But I do think that some people would do well to take a step back and appreciate what you have. Join a group that isn't about trading and getting and obtaining and collect or hoarding, as I said. It's about celebrating the items that you do have. And I do love that stipulation that your group has where you can't just come in and sell, because people will try to do that. And if that's the purpose of why they collect, I can't tell someone how to collect or how not to collect, but you're not trying to be that. You want to be an avenue for people to trust that everyone who's involved is there for a specific reason. And that's for a shared love of the product as opposed to an intent to sell eventually. And that's kind of why they collected in the first place.
One of the things that I've seen on Matt's site in particular, and it's my philosophy as well, and I've said this many times on our podcast and to people that are asking, because you and I both get mad a lot of, what is this worth? Will it go up in value? Is this a good investment? And my number one philosophy is buy a piece because you really like it and it means something to you. And hopefully it will appreciate, but if it doesn't, you still got the piece that you wanted that brought you joy, as you said. And so that's really important to me. And then, just making sure that you have a good collection of, and you look around your room and everything means something to you, which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing about his group that I love tuning into, and I haven't done it as much over the summer as I've taken a little easier this summer, but when I go into his group and I see the comments and the excitement when people post something on a mail day that they got, and it brings me a lot of joy, and I'm proud of when it originates at Frameworth, and mostly all the Sidney Crosby stuff does, other than what he signs in the street, and he's happy to do that when he bumps into somebody. But the excitement that they get on mail day and the comments, and not just the person that's posting it, but everybody else saying, wow, that's a great piece. Oh, where'd you get it? How much you pay for it? Is there another one available? I'd love one of those in my collection. That's the fun of his group.
Well, it's fun. It's fun because, I started my point by saying a lot of collectors can just get so close to it that they lose that track of what their love was all about in the first place. And in saying that, I forgot the fact that we, as the people who create the product and produce it, can also overly commodify it to a point where we lose track of its sentiment and what it actually means to people. So, we're kind of coming full circle in a nice way, but, we started off, pre-COVID, we dealt with a lot of people in between us and the customers, now getting out to reach out and communicate, for better and worse, mentally, because sometimes we hear some things that we didn't necessarily like, but ultimately we're better off for it. But that continued relationship with the customer, and maybe the customer with us, just helps us better understand the intention behind it and rediscover our love for the products in the first place. And that's why, Matt, you mentioned right now the Sidney Crosby group's got about 600, over 600 people, Mario Lemieux about 500, over 500 people. And, I think a lot of people would probably say, well, we want 10,000, we want 15,000. And I'm sure, Matt, what can't be understated is your expertise in developing and finding traction in things like this. If you wanted that, I'm sure you could get it. But I think the importance is making sure that this is it's more of like a community as opposed to just population growth, right? And in the same way, we value a relationship with one customer that can give us better feedback more than 20 customers who are just going to do a transaction and get the heck out of Dodge, right? Was that an intention when you were growing that group as well with you, Matt?
Yeah, I have a pretty similar collection and business philosophy to things, and it's fewer better. So, and I say this a lot. I think I've even told Brian about this before. We were talking about products and some of the consumers out there. Is like you want fewer better. Like you want to narrow your focus. You could have a group that's 10,000 people, and then you're going to spend all your time managing all the problems with a group of 10,000 people, or you can have a group of 600 people that are the right people. That help each other out and do the right thing and are genuinely there for the right reason. I say the same thing with collecting. It's like you could collect a million different one-off items, and at that point you're hoarding, or you could focus on what the right items are and narrow your focus there. So Brian said one thing there, talking about the pricing piece of people ask all the time, like, what's this worth? Is it going to go up in value? And that's what's nice about the community, is people can come in and say, look, I bought that thing 3 years ago, actually, for a fraction of the price. And now someone will come in and say, yeah, I bought it last week for 3 times that. Like, I wish I could still get it for that. But like, people can share those experiences. You would never have that data or that information otherwise. And sometimes stuff goes down, sometimes stuff goes up. But what, I tell people a lot that, get upset about, pricing pieces. I say, like, nobody ever purchases a house hoping that it goes down one day. Like you buy a house because at worst case you still have a house, but ideally it goes up and you're in a good situation one day. Like sure. That's how it works. Like I don't see anything really different than when you're buying a collectible or memorabilia piece. Like you're buying a specific purpose or intent. Like you're not buying it to retire. If you're building your collectibles collection, whether it be cards or memorabilia around the specific intent to retire on it, you're playing with fire. You have to have a different a reason, and that's why I always go back to that. Like, have a story, have joy, like get things that mean something to you.
The one thing another thing I really like about his group is I've actually got to know the names in the group and some of the people that I actually follow their personal page back, because I want to see what is behind the person that is the collector. Kevin's one, Nancy's one. I won't mention last names. I don't know that that's appropriate, but I look at the group and I know the kind of comments they make, and I know some of the people can afford more than others, but they still follow. So, and they're very gracious. I love that piece. I wish I could afford it. Right. Because not everybody's in the same bracket. And there's other pieces, doesn't matter what the price is, they're going to buy it. But there doesn't seem to be that jealousy.
Jealousy.
There's envy. I wish I could.
Well, I
but
mean,
jealousy,
isn't an element of it kind of living vicariously through the collector who is getting? I mean, like, I read GQ magazine. I can't afford a $400 pair of sweatpants, but I can look at it in a picture and think, like, that's pretty cool. Maybe I would want that someday if I had an ungodly amount of money. But so I understand that. I think there's an element, Rob Report is a magazine where people look at luxury vehicles and everything.
I bought that all the time. I want one of those yachts, but I'll never get one.
That's it, right? And there's there is an element of sort of dopamine runoff when someone opens a mail day thing and everyone else gets to enjoy it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what that community is.
That's the beauty
about.
of Matt's group, as opposed to, and look, there's benefits and there's good things and bad things about all the groups. He's got a real special group, and I enjoy. I probably follow it as much or more than anybody else that I follow, because I enjoy the comments, and it's obviously important to me to understand what they're doing. And these guys are experts in the field, or a lot of them really know their stuff. So when I watch their group, I get some really good feedback, one good or bad, to help me develop the line, and I pass that on to Sydney.
We've talked a lot about the groups, Matt. I don't know if we've mentioned them by name, though. Do you want to give a quick shout out of what they are? We'll include links to them in the show notes of this episode, but do you want to give a quick shout out to them? And then maybe, we're getting close to needing to wrap up, so give them a shout out, let everyone know where to find them, and then maybe one last final piece of advice to collectors out there, and then we'll take it home.
Yeah. So if you just search on Facebook for Sidney Crosby Memorabilia Collectors or Mario Lemieux Memorabilia Collectors, they both have a very similar header on them. I did that on purpose to know that they were a bit connected there.
It's branding, baby. Yeah.
So you can go ahead and you can send a request to join. You have to answer the questions to join. So it's one of the requirements, because we want people to we want to filter bots or anything else out of there.
Yep.
And the second piece there is you have to have an account that's on Facebook. You have to have an account that's at least a year old, because we want to make sure that, again, we're protecting people that's in there. It's a smaller community. We want people in there for the right reasons, and to try to keep some of the bad out. So you can find us on there and jump in, come hang out. Like I said, we'll give we'll help anybody out. We'll give advice. There's tons of people in there that are great group experts. And we'll even share recommendations for you too. So I even think there was a week or two ago there was a Frameworth product up. It might have been like a puck set, and I think I had posted on there that, like, hey guys, this is a good deal, because if you break it down from a business standpoint mathematically on what you're paying, it was the 3-puck Stanley Cup set.
Yeah.
If you buy puck, what you're getting out of this and doing it with this deal and shipping, like, this turns out to be a good deal for those of you who want Crosby puck. Like, we try to help people out there, and
give them a little insight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it isn't a good deal, he just keeps quiet.
I do.
No, but you know what? I won't put a deal. A lot of the things that I put together, I do it with this particular group in mind.
Right.
Will they think it's a good deal? And I did a mystery box recently that was selling for $387. Now, you either got a puck, a framed 8x10, or a jersey. Now, you get the jersey, you're doing really well.
Yeah.
And it was a 1 in 5 chance, I think. You get the frame picture, you're still doing better than your 387 at retail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not to say you can't find a resale somewhere at a better price, but I know what we have on our website. And the puck was borderline about that price, and Matt said, no, that's pretty good value there.
Also,
but I did that with you in mind, knowing that I'm going to see the criticism, and I took a lot of criticism for a Toronto Maple Leaf box that I put out, which I didn't give enough thought to, because whereas the Sidney Crosby puck, just a puck, which we don't typically sell by itself, was in that price range, I didn't realize the same model didn't work for the Leafs as well. And we took a lot of flack for that, and I learned from that.
Right.
So I'll make adjustments moving forward. But Sydney, I know a lot better than some of the other groups or things that we sell.
I get a lot of
Matt,
flack for breaking down the numbers on things, maybe a little bit too much. even by my wife. I'm really good at buying cars and different things because I'll overanalyze. So I think the members of the group will know when there's something like that up, I'm going to pop up like a quick analysis on like, hey guys, this is where it doesn't make sense. And that one was a quick one, because I was telling her, a lot of the questions as people were buying them were, what are my chances at this? And I did the math on it myself and said, guys, you got a 1 in 5 chance at a jersey. It looked like there were 17 products, so it's almost a 1 in 5 chance at everything when you kind of start to map it out. Plus a chance at a stick. Almost everything's the exact value. You're not factoring in that there's free shipping on top of it. So you're pretty much getting what you paid for, no matter what you get out of it.
With a potential higher
It's
upside.
all upside.
Yeah.
The one thing about that is it sold out in 14 minutes. So I know it was a good deal.
Yeah. So Matt, we're getting towards the end here. Anything else you wanted to plug? Anything you wanted to throw out there for the listeners?
No, I mean, I think, this has been great. I think for everybody out there, I just say, that's in collecting, looking to be collecting, even better in collectors out there, like, connect with your other fellow collectors, help each other out. I tell everybody all the time, like, again, I'll hammer on, like, collect things that mean something to you. Like, there's a lot of people out there who collect just to collect, or collect, just to, sell or hope they get retirement one day. The best collectors to be around, and the happiest ones are those, again, who have stories behind everything they do, because they do it as a hobby, and they really enjoy it. So find yourself a good community and jump in part of it. And if you like Sid or Maria and want to join ours, we're happy to have you.
Awesome. As long as you can answer the skill testing question, which is, what is the company who supports or who represents Frameworth, Sidney Crosby exclusively? And hey, spoiler alert, the answer is in the name of the title of this podcast. Once again, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Matt Ellenberger, Dad, you have one more thing to leave
I just want to say that we're going to sit afterwards and we're going to figure out a little bit of a thank you to his group for working with us. We'll do a special draw or something, which we'll announce. You'll figure out how to do that between you and Matt. And then join the group, because we're going to have some special offers exclusive to that group, and as we're doing with other groups. We're trying to kind of pinpoint, maybe advance on new items or something along those lines, and a new marketing program moving forward. So join these groups if you want to get a little bit of a head start on some of the brand new products. So around this room, we're now developing a number of new Sidney pieces that haven't been released yet. And they're ready, except I'm holding off on them till I'm back here full time, so we can figure out the best way to release them.
Perfect.
So,
yeah, if you're out there and you have a similar group or a similar community, and you think you want to give a little bit of a shout out to them, email us, signoffpod@frameworth.com. As we mentioned, we want to do, every so often, another deep dive into the mind of the collector and make sure that we keep that relevant. As we've discussed over the last hour, it's incredibly important that both the collector keeps the industry in mind, and the industry keeps the collector in mind. I think those two can coexist very nicely. So once again, Matt Ellenberger, thank you so much for joining us. Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth, thank you for joining us once again. My name is Mikey Aaronworth, host of the Sign Off Podcast, and this is us signing off. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter @Frameworth Sport or Instagram @Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at @Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram @Aaronworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers Mikey Aaronworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Aaronworth, signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it!